The House will come to order. Members will be at their seats. The clerk has opened the roll and you may record your presence. Please rise and give your attention to the House chaplain, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance led by Representative Wassinger.
Good morning, friends. Let us pray together. Dear Father, I ask your blessings on these men and women gathered in this chamber of decision-making. Some have been dealing with sickness. Would you bring healing and strength to their bodies? Some have met personal difficulties. Would you grant them unusual wisdom as they seek the right path to follow? And yes, some have recently lost loved ones. Would you bestow your peace and comfort upon them? All gathered here are single-minded in doing the best for the people of Kansas, and we thank you for their commitment and dedication. Help us to always look to you for wisdom, direction, and spiritual affirmation. Your word teaches us, woe to those who call evil good and good evil, who substitute darkness for light and light for darkness, who substitute bitter for sweet and sweet for bitter. Woe are those who are wise in their own eyes and clever in their own sight. Father, help us to keep our eyes on the needs of those who've entrusted us with this tremendous responsibility. When we have differences of opinion, give us patience with one another. Help us to keep our emotions in check and our minds fully engaged on the matters at hand. And bless our national and state leaders as they carry out the will of the people. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen.
Amen. And to the republic for which it stands, indivisible. Have all members had an opportunity to record their presence? The clerk will close the roll and record the attendance. Introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions, the clerk will read.
HB 2224 by Representative Simmons and Fairchild, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure. HB 2225 by Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications, requested by Nathaniel Blank on behalf of Ideatech, an act concerning residential rentals and leases. HB 2226 by Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Telecommunications, requested by J.R. Behan on behalf of ITC Great Plains, an act concerning public utilities. HB 2227 by Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, requested by Representative Martinez on behalf of Faith Martin, lobbyist for the Cedric Lofton Action Planning Committee, an act concerning children and minors. HB 2228 by Committee on Corrections and Juvenile Justice, requested by Jennifer King on behalf of the Department of Corrections, an act concerning the Secretary of Corrections. HB 2229 by Representative Rivas, an act concerning the Kansas Amusement Right Act. HB 2230 by Representative Rivas, an act concerning food products. HB 2231 by Committee on Taxation, requested by Zach Denny on behalf of the Department of Revenue, an act concerning income taxation. HB 2232 by Committee on Taxation, requested by Jeannie Godden on behalf of Kansas for Life, an act concerning income taxation. HB 2233 by Committee on Taxation, requested by Representative Swartfeiger, an act concerning taxation. HB 2234 by Committee on Taxation, requested by Representative Butler on behalf of Junction City Main Street, an act concerning sales taxation. HCR 5009 by Representative Simmons, a proposition to amend Article 14 of the Constitution of the State of Kansas by adding a new section thereto. HB 2235 by Committee on Financial Institutions and Pensions, requested by Representative Hoheisel, an act concerning financial institutions. HB 2236 by Committee on Appropriations, requested by Representative Ballard on behalf of the Kansas Department for Aging and Disability Services, an act concerning mental health. HB 2237 by Committee on Appropriations, requested by Representative Francis on behalf of the Department of Administration, an act concerning state agencies.
HB 2048 appears on the consent calendar for the second day. Is there an objection? Seeing none, it will remain on the consent calendar for the third day. HB 2037 appears on the consent calendar for the third day. Is there an objection? Seeing none, it will be advanced to final action. Final action on bills and concurrent resolutions. The clerk will read.
HB 2037 by Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, an act concerning economic development relating to tourism, increasing the membership of the Council on Travel and Tourism appointed by the governor, and updating the House committee assignment required for the House members of the Council from the Committee on Agriculture and Natural Resources to the Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development, equalizing the allocation of funds from the Department of Commerce's matching grant program for the promotion of tourism for private, public, and nonprofit entities, and removing the restriction on the percentage of such funds granted to a single entity.
This constitutes final action on HB 2037. The clerk will open the roll, and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire? All of the House has been raised. See. Yeah, there's 10 hands. Seeing 10 hands, call the House is in order. Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Francis votes aye. Representative Barth votes aye. Representative Getz votes aye. That's bad. Representative Hawkins votes aye. Representative Martinez votes aye. Representative Carlin votes aye. Representative White votes aye. Not seeing 10 hands, callers raised. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Seeing none. House Bill 2037, having voted in favor, there it is. House Bill 2037, 115 voting in favor and 4 against. The passage of House Bill 2037, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. A little rusty. The good thing is we'll do a lot more of these and we'll get good at it. Speaker recognizes Representative Humphreys for a motion to concur on HCR 5003.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, this has to do with the joint rules that we passed, HCR 5003. When it went over to the Senate, they did make an amendment. And the amendment was to the Joint Rule 3. And what they did was they struck a piece that said there was an exemption for the tax committee when it had to do with how many bills they could put in conference committee reports. And I will stand for questions if you have any questions about that.
Is there discussion? Representative Clayton is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like our previous speaker, our Rules Chair, it is rare in the moment that I agree with the Senate, but clock this out as one moment in which they did the right thing. I urge you all to concur.
Speaker recognizes Representative Adam Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, again, this is the same speech I gave when we were doing the House rules. This is simply striking the exemption that tax committee has had. I know we all love tax exemptions. No, just kidding. But I think it's fair that the tax committee is subject to the same standards as every other committee. So I fully support this amendment.
Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, Representative Humphreys, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move that the House concur in Senate amendments to HCR 5003.
This constitutes final action on House Concurrent Resolution 5003. The clerk will open the roll and you may record your vote. Has every member had an opportunity to record their vote? The clerk will close the roll. Does any member desire to explain his or her vote? Hold on. Does any member desire to change his or her vote? Representative Hoheisel votes aye. Any further changes? Seeing none, 118 having voted in favor and 1 against the passage of HCR 5003, the same having received a constitutional majority, the bill is hereby declared passed. The clerk will record the vote. Speaker recognizes Majority Leader Croft for a motion to resolve into the Committee of the Whole.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House resolve itself into the Committee of the Whole for the purpose of considering those items under the heading of General Orders.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The motion carries. Speaker appoints Representative Rogers as to chair the Committee of the Whole.
Good morning, colleagues. First item up for business is HCR 5004. For the purpose of carrying HCR 5004, the chair recognizes Representative Proctor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There were amendments. I move the adoption of the committee report.
You have heard the motion. All in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The motion passes. The committee report is adopted. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise before the body today to present HCR 5004. This resolution, if adopted in both houses by a 2/3 majority, would place on the ballot in 2026 a constitutional question. Should citizens be the only ones in the state of Kansas that are able to vote? And I think that that is self-evident. I think that the framers of our Constitution, when they wrote it, understood that they were putting that in the Constitution. But and they understood it so obviously that they didn't state it explicitly. What they put in our Constitution was that every citizen can vote. They did not put in our Constitution, and it is nowhere in our statute currently, that only a citizen can vote. And you might think, well, gee, there's no difference there. I had raised to your attention 5 states that have the same or similar language in their Constitution. State of California, state of Illinois, state of Maryland, the state of New York, and the state of Vermont have every or some similar language in their Constitution. And in each one of those states, non-citizens are allowed to vote in their municipal elections. I don't think that that was the intent of the framers of our Constitution, so I think that we should make it explicitly clear, just like it's explicitly clear in 15 other states' constitutions, that only U.S. citizens are allowed to vote in our elections. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will stand for questions.
Does any member desire to speak to the bill? Chair recognizes Representative Haskins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the chair of the Elections Committee. Would like to provide a different perspective on this. This bill is something that's not necessary, or this resolution is not necessary. I want you to keep in mind that currently the word is every U.S. citizen is allowed to be qualified to vote. So what is being asked is we change one word, and we're going to add 18 words in there to make sure that we really have a U.S. citizen to vote. This is not a necessary priority, in my opinion. We have other things that we need to be focused on, but because it's in front of you today, keep in mind a few things. One, there is no justification that has been provided in committee that would verify that we need to spend the $50,000 according to the fiscal note to put this on the ballot. Two, there has never been an opportunity for anyone to really thoroughly vet this to make sure that the states that have adopted this have actually seen a productivity of increased voting other than when the bill or the resolution was on the ballot. We saw a significant increase in an ideology, Republican-based voters going to the poll. Third, there's no look into who's actually supporting this. The citizens' vote has been the main contributor to this in 26 states. In Colorado, which is the most recent, they spent $1.5 million to get this on the ballot. Now I ask you, we only have one word and we're going to add 18 words. And if it's so important, why do we have to spend $1.5 million to make it happen? The Secretary of State's office, fourth issue, the Secretary of State's office was neutral on this bill. This was not a priority for them. And that's because they don't see a problem. In their own testimony, out of the last 20 years, take a guess how many possible non-citizens were identified or might have voted illegally. The answer is 5. Possible. Over 1 million people, Kansans, voted in the last election. Let's take that number, 1 million, let's reduce it some. And to calculate how many voters in 20 years did we have, you would have close to 15 million voters. If you took the 5 that were possible, the percent ratio of a number of individuals who could have been non-citizens is really small. I would encourage you to also keep in mind that the main justification is for the possibility that in municipality elections, local elections, that this needs to be defined. But what's being sacrificed is another point, is that it's already listed in the state constitution covering this. If you look at Article 6, Section 5, Article 9, Section 2, Article 12, Section 5, Article 5, Section 1, and Article 15, Section 1, you have already identified that we've solved this. Listen, let's not look at our forefathers and say, hey, you got it wrong. And trust me, Haskins are very competitive, and I like to beat my grandfather in card games. But in 1918, they got the definition right. One word for 18. The other factor that you want to keep in mind, and this was rather controversial, we had a conferee come to the well and say, let's be very careful about the language that we use. And we had a very lively discussion about that. The point is that you cannot deny, unless you're not paying attention, that we have issues when it comes to violence against race. Xenophobia is something that is very popular in our media to share, and it's actually very real. If you go back to 2019, the courts decided that we need to sentence the 3 men that, quote, conspire to use weapon of mass destruction to eliminate individuals from voting in Garden City. The number of hate crimes against anti-Asians is up 339%. You remember that number I gave you about the number of voters that could have been identified as non-citizens, the really small? 339% is really large, if you're wanting to know. Also, the political violence and the hate crimes have increased, according to the FBI reports. Folks, we got other issues we need to focus on. If you want to devote attention to this issue to drum up turnout for elections, let's talk about how we can make voting more available by maybe reviewing other things like ballot boxes, early voting opportunities. Let's not look at something that is actually going to be unnecessary. Adding 18 words that one word could cover, even if that one word came in 1918, is not a good investment. Please oppose this.
Chair recognizes Representative Carmichael.
Excuse me. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I rise in opposition to HCR 5004 for the reasons that we just heard expressed by the ranking member of the committee. I do, however, have questions for the chair, my friend from Leavenworth, if he's available and willing to answer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The notes that were provided to me regarding the hearing in your committee, and by the way, I'm sorry, I enjoyed the committee greatly, but was called away to other committees that are not nearly as much fun, at least. So I have to ask you these questions as I was not there. But the notes that were provided to me would suggest that there were 2 oral proponents for this bill and 1 written only proponent. Is that correct?
I don't have the notes in front of me, but I believe that that was correct.
The notes that were provided to me indicate that the first of the oral proponents was Madeline Melissa, a visiting fellow from Opportunity Solutions Project. Is that generally consistent with your recollection?
I don't remember if she was the first person to speak, but I believe she did speak, yes.
And many of us are familiar with Opportunity Solutions Project. It's an outfit out of Tallahassee, Florida, that travels around the country testifying. So my question for you regarding Ms. Melissa, is she a citizen of the state of Kansas?
I would imagine she's not.
I would speculate the same. The second proponent was Becky Arps, the Director of Research for Americans for Citizen Voting. Now, I was unable to find that they even acknowledged where they were out of or what their address was on their website, but I see that they also testify all around the country. Was or is Ms. Arps a citizen of the state of Kansas?
She was not, I believe, but I don't know that for a fact.
And the only other proponent for this legislation before your committee, at least according to my notes, was Avi McCullough, the president of Americans for Citizen Voting, the same organization that Ms. Arps came into Kansas and presumably flew home to testify. To your knowledge, is Ms. McCullough a citizen of the state of Kansas?
I don't know if she's a citizen of the state of Kansas, but I am, and so are the 46 co-sponsors for this resolution. So I think there's plenty of support in the state of Kansas for this.
I disagree. I oftentimes find my friends here in the Capitol spend their time talking to themselves rather than listening to their constituents. But I appreciate your answers. Thank you, sir. I think it's pretty obvious what this is really about. By a bunch of out-of-state lobbyists who are making money, traveling around the country, stirring up trouble where there's not a problem, and raising money on the backs of people who contribute to their organizations based upon nothing but rumor, innuendo, suggestions, and untruths. And I don't want any part of supporting that. And so accordingly, Mr. Chair, I will be voting no on HCR 5004. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Carr.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Would the carrier of the bill please stand for question? My question is, if in fact this is currently part of the Constitution, can you kind of give me an explanation as to why we felt we needed to make a separate or additional codification in Kansas statute?
Thank you for the question, Representative. The point is that it's not part of our Constitution. Right now, our Constitution says that every United States citizen who is 18 or over 18 or older and a resident of Kansas can vote, and that you can't take away their right to vote without due process of the law. Nowhere in our Constitution, nowhere in our statute does it say only U.S. citizens can vote.
So then you would say that this was just kind of making that definition more clear so that we, thank you very much. Then I would also ask this, if we're making things more clear just to make certain that we don't violate them in the future, then I would also ask that we look to the 14th Amendment and allow Kansas to make that a little more clear so that we don't ever have any issues concerning that moving forward. Thank you.
The chair recognizes Representative Potter Partial.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As a child of immigrants, one who is a citizen and one who isn't a citizen, I can tell you firsthand, when you go to the to get your driver's license, you are asked whether you want to register to vote. And if you're not a citizen, they generally don't, they still let you register to vote. So it becomes an issue on our voter rolls that we do in fact have those who are non-citizens registered to vote. And that is the underlying reason why I support this, because of the Motor Voter Act. It has made it too simple to end up on the voter rolls, whether it's intentionally or unintentionally, as a non-citizen. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Alcala.
Thank you very much. I have a question for the carrier of the bill, please. How you doing, Representative?
My question to you is, did you, to the Attorney General's office or anybody, was there any question posed for a legal opinion on this issue? And I ask that because of your statement saying that the verbiage, citizen, non-citizen, being able to vote.
So the attorney for the Secretary of State's office came in and testified on this bill, I believe is neutral on behalf of the Secretary of State's office, and saw it somewhat like we saw it in terms of our reading of the Constitution.
But didn't give an opinion, they just stated.
No, we didn't ask for a formal written opinion, sir.
Okay, thank you. Well, I would stand opposed to this bill. One, because I think it clouds the waters with our laws. I think we presently have a process in place that clarifies this, that makes it almost impossible for somebody to go and vote that's not a citizen. I'm not saying impossible, but almost impossible. And this is how our laws, and we've been through them here, we go through and we try to do an interpretation. There's been changes and then changes. I think it just clouds the water. And I'm really surprised that our Attorney General didn't get involved and make an opinion on this, because I think if it was valid, we'd see that he took a stance on this issue and he didn't. I just think it allows people that want to support and run this bill to go around and say, hey, I ran some immigration legalization that they couldn't do this, they could do that. And I just think it makes the law very complicated. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Susan Ruiz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You know, I don't think it should be this easy to change our Constitution. And I know it takes 2/3 of the vote, and there's other steps, I agree. But this seems a little just too easy and a little too convenient to be changing up our Constitution just because of semantics with some words. Our Constitution is very clear. You have to be a U.S. citizen in order to vote. We have guardrails in place when you go and get your driver's license. You have to produce proof of residency, proof of identity. Those guardrails are already in place. I don't know why we feel that you've got to mess with the Constitution other than to say, hey, you know, I did this. The other thing I take real big issue on this, it's going to cost the state $50,000. And, you know, everybody's like, okay, $50,000, that's not much. But if you sit on these budget committees, like I've had to sit into a budget committee, having to fight for every nickel and dime to be able to help agencies, whether it's our departments, whether it's organizations that come to our budget committees and ask for additional services, $50,000 would go a long way. This is not a good use of our tax dollars. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I vote no.
Does any other member wish to speak to the bill? Seeing none, Representative Proctor, you may close.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since I've been the chair of the Elections Committee, I've tried to make the committee a platform where we can have a civil discussion about these issues. Since 2020, we have not been having a civil discussion about elections as a country. We've been shouting at each other. And so I've tried to make it a platform where folks can come, they can speak their piece, and then they're going to be challenged with questions by the committee members that, you know, on their views. One of the key elements of that is when something untrue gets said, I think it's very important that we challenge it right away so that it doesn't get into the media as fact. If somebody says something untrue and we sit there as committee members and don't say anything to contradict it, we are tacitly agreeing with that untrue fact. And I'm not saying it's a lie. People really honestly believe a lot of the things that they come into the committee and say that aren't true. Somebody said here at the well that only 5 non-citizens had been caught voting in the state of Kansas in the last 10 or 20 years. I can't remember what they said. I'd like to correct the record on that because we heard testimony in our committee that the list that they just got in November, they have as many as 80 people who, after investigation, they still believe are non-citizens that are on our voter rolls, and evidence that at least 20 of those people voted. So the idea that there have been 5 people in the last 20 years is incorrect. The other thing that I'd like to challenge that was said here at the a previous representative said that this is a waste of time to fix something just because of the semantics with some words. Our laws are words, and the words mean something, and they're very, very important, which is why I'm here presenting this resolution to amend our Constitution, because the words in that Constitution are very important to our way of life and our form of government. There is nothing more fundamental to our way of government and our way of life than voter confidence that the results of the election reflect the will of the voter, that every vote is counted and only valid votes are counted, that their votes aren't diluted by invalid votes. And this is the first step in being able to tell Kansans clearly, precisely, and confidently that only U.S. citizens are voting in our elections. With that, Mr. Chair, I move that when the body rises and reports, it reports HCR 5004 favorably for passage.
You have heard the motion by Representative Proctor to report HCR 5004 favorably. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. The ayes appear to have it. The ayes do have it. Motion passes. The body will be at ease. Body, the chair recognizes Majority Leader Croft.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In the interest of time, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Chair, in accordance with House Rule 1903, I move House Bill 2020, appearing under the order of business, general orders, be passed over and retain a place on the calendar.
You've heard the motion by Representative Croft. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, nay. Motion carries. This concludes general orders. The chair recognizes, once again, the Majority Leader.
Mr. Chair, I move that we rise and report.
You've heard the motion to rise and report. All those in favor, aye. Opposed, no. Motion passes.
The clerk will read the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee of the Whole recommends that HCR 5004 be adopted as amended.
Speaker recognizes Representative Rogers to adopt the Committee of the Whole report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the Committee of the Whole report.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. Reports of standing committee, the clerk will read.
The Committee on Energy, Utilities, and Communications recommends HB 2040 be passed. The Committee on Insurance recommends HB 2040 be passed. The Committee on Insurance recommends HB 2045 be passed, and because the committee is of the opinion that the bill is of a non-controversial nature, be placed on the consent calendar. The Committee on Insurance recommends HB 2044 be passed, and because the committee is of the opinion that the bill is of a non-controversial nature, be placed on the consent calendar. The Committee on Transportation recommends HB 2030 be amended and the bill be passed as amended. The Committee on Transportation recommends HB 2029 be amended and the bill be passed as amended. The Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development recommends HB 2092 be passed. The Committee on Federal and State Affairs recommends HB 2052 be passed.
Is there any objection to returning to that order of business, introduction of bills and concurrent resolutions? Seeing no objection, the clerk will read.
HB 2238 by Committee on Appropriations requested by Representative Kay Williams, an act concerning legislative staff agencies. HB 2239 by Committee on Commerce, Labor, and Economic Development requested by Carson Cruzerio, an act concerning labor and employment. HB 2240 by Committee on Welfare Reform requested by Representative Auerkamp, an act concerning public assistance. HB 2241 by Committee on Judiciary requested by Garrett Henson on behalf of the Kansas Attorney General, an act concerning civil procedure. HB 2242 by Committee on Judiciary requested by Representative Proctor on behalf of Michelle Reichert, an act concerning federal jurisdiction. HB 2243 by Committee on Judiciary requested by Representative Proctor on behalf of Michelle Reichert, an act concerning children and minors. HB 2244 by Committee on Insurance requested by Representative Sutton, an act concerning the Board of Pharmacy. HB 2245 by Committee on Insurance requested by Representative Sutton, an act concerning the Commissioner of Insurance. HB 2246 by Committee on Insurance requested by Representative Sutton, an act concerning health and healthcare. HB 2247 by Committee on Health and Human Services requested by Representative Rivas on behalf of the Kansas Dental Association, an act concerning insurance. HB 2248 by Committee on Health and Human Services requested by Representative Turner on behalf of the Kansas Hospital Association, an act concerning the State Board of Regents. HB 2249 by Committee on Health and Human Services requested by Representative W. Carpenter on behalf of the Kansas Hospital Association, an act concerning rural emergency hospitals. HB 2250 by Committee on Health and Human Services requested by Representative W. Carpenter on behalf of the Kansas Hospital Association, an act relating to health and health care. HB 2251 by Committee on Health and Human Services requested by Representative Beeler, an act concerning health and health care. HB 2252 by Committee on Health and Human Services requested by Representatives Beeler and McDonald on behalf of casino employees against smoking effects, an act concerning the Kansas Indoor Clean Air Act. HB 2253 by Committee on Agricultural and Natural Resources requested by Representative Swartfeiger and Steele on behalf of the Kansas Cattlemen's Association and the Kansas Livestock Association, an act concerning crimes, punishment, and criminal procedure. HB 2254 by Committee on Agricultural and Natural Resources requested by Representative Rajas, an act concerning agriculture. HB 2255 by Committee on Agricultural and Natural Resources requested by Kelsey Olson on behalf of the Kansas Department of Agriculture, an act concerning weights and measures. HB 2256 by Committee on Veterans and Military requested by Representative Butler, an act concerning the governor. HB 2257 by Representative Ballard on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Lawrence, Douglas County, an act concerning elections. HB 2258 by Representative Ballard on behalf of the League of Women Voters of Lawrence, Douglas County, an act concerning elections. HB 2259 by Committee on Education requested by Representative Featherston on behalf of Representative Martinez, an act concerning education. HB 2260 by Committee on Transportation requested by Representative Alcala on behalf of Todd Linder, an act concerning traffic regulations. HB 2261 by Committee on Transportation requested by Lieutenant Roy Wise on behalf of the Kansas Highway Patrol, an act concerning the Kansas Highway Patrol. HB 2262 by Committee on Transportation requested by Representative Blex on behalf of a constituent, an act concerning motor vehicles. HB 2263 by Committee on Transportation, requested by Catherine Magana on behalf of the Department of Transportation, an act concerning roads and highways. HB 2264 by Representative Curtis, an act concerning employment. HB 2265 by Representative Collins, an act designating the polka as the official dance of the state of Kansas. HB 2266 by Committee on Health and Human Services, requested by Representative Beeler on behalf of the Kansas Chamber of Commerce, an act concerning health and health care. HB 2267 by Committee on Health and Human Services, requested by Representative S. Ruiz, an act concerning health and health care.
Temporary committee assignments. Representative Blake Carpenter will replace Representative Jesse Bourgeon on the House Committee on Judiciary on February 4th. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on February 4th. Representative Cindy Neighbor replaces Representative KCO Hobson on the House Committee on Transportation on February 4th. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on February 4th. Representative Cindy Neighbor replaces Representative KCO Hobson on the House Committee on General Government Budget on February 4th. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on February 4th. Representative Sidney Carlin replaces Representative Tobias Schlingensieben on the House Committee on Local Government on Wednesday, February 5th. This appointment will expire at the end of the day on February 5th. Are there announcements? Speaker recognizes Representative Blake Carpenter. Oh, sorry about that.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So last year, before Representative Mason passed away, he handed the baton to me when it comes to the Taiwan resolution. And so we have the language for the Taiwan resolution. I don't have it on my desk today, but I will be sending it out to your emails. Would love to have folks sign on to that. And thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Laura Williams.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just a reminder, there will be a JOCO delegation meeting at room 118 North after we adjourn. There will be Chick-fil-A, and we'll discuss passing the rules and bylaws for our delegation.
And in addition, Representative Williams and I would like to invite all members of the Kansas Legislature to join us for a reception at the Celtic Fox beginning at 4 o'clock, sponsored by the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce and
who else?
the Civic Council.
And the Civic Council. So come one, come all.
Thank you.
And that was Representative Pam Curtis. Speaker recognizes Representative Oropeza. Oropeza.
Sorry, Mr. Speaker, I apologize. I just want to let everybody know from the Wyandotte County Leavenworth delegation, we are having lunch today in room 152 after we adjourn. Thank you.
Speaker recognizes Representative Turk.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a rare opportunity to sign on to a resolution that actually gets something done, a tangible role to play in our day-to-day. The Kansas Air National Guard's 190th Air Refueling Wing at Forbes Field is in a competitive bid to acquire the new KC-46A Pegasus air refueler. We currently operate the KC-135 Strato tanker, which is almost 70 years old, so her end is near. And in order to maintain our mission here in the state of Kansas, we need to acquire the new KC-46. So at my desk, I have a resolution that I'm inviting everybody to be a co-signer on. There's a lot of details that go into it, and I'm glad to talk to you, but just in a nutshell, it formally expresses the Kansas Legislature's support for the 190th. It highlights our readiness and capabilities and our commitment to national defense. And the role it plays is a very tangible role in the competitive bid process within the DoD. So I will have it at my desk, and if for some reason you're too busy and you can't get to me today, I will have it in my office in 459 West, and I appreciate your help. Thank you.
That resolution is very important for our Kansas National Guard. Thank you, Representative Turk. Speaker recognizes Representative Poskin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Body, tomorrow we will be recognizing Early Childhood Advocacy Day. There is a resolution that is in your inbox for me. Just reply all if you would like to sponsor it. We'll be recognizing parents, child care providers, home visitors, healthcare workers, and all early childhood professionals who support young children in the most critical period of development in their lives. And if you need to have any questions about how important that is from birth to 5, ask a mom of 7. Thank you so much, and I hope you will join me in co-sponsoring.
Speaker recognizes Representative Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Tomorrow morning, 7 o'clock in room 142, we continue with our Bible study. Tomorrow it's going to be a little bit about the story of Jacob and his son, that's Joseph, and the coat of many colors. So we appreciate it if you can come and visit with us and listen in at 7 o'clock tomorrow morning, room 142. Thank you.
Speaker recognizes Representative Goddard.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Southeast Kansas Legislative Caucus will meet upon adjournment in 142 South. Thank you.
Speaker recognizes Representative Stogsdill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Democrats, we will have agenda tomorrow morning, 8:30, 152 South. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Speaker recognizes Representative Featherston.
Colleagues, I just wanted to point out onto your desk, there's a fact sheet from the Susan G. Komen Foundation. This regards the mammogram bill that passed this body pretty overwhelmingly last year. I do have the co-sponsor sheet here, and I have emailed you all a copy of the bill. So I'll hang out for a little bit if anybody wants to sign on to this bipartisan bill.
Are there any further announcements? Seeing none, the Speaker recognizes the Majority Leader for a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Speaker, I move the House adjourn until Wednesday, February 5th at 11 a.m.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are adjourned.